New Rose Hotel is a 1998 crime thriller starring Christopher Walken, Willem Dafoe, and Asia Argento, and written and directed by Abel Ferrara. It's based on William Gibson's short story of the same name. Gibson is known as the godfather of cyberpunk thanks to his novels Neuromancer, Count Zero, and Mona Lisa Overdrive, collectively known as the Sprawl Trilogy due to the fact that they all take place, at least in part, in the giant megacity that covers the entire eastern seaboard of the US known as the Boston-Atlanta Metropolitan Axis, but colloquially known as the Sprawl. New Rose Hotel is one of 3 short stories from the collection Burning Chrome that also take place in the Sprawl setting, the other 2 being Burning Chrome and Johnny Mnemonic. I'm lining all this out because it's actually kind of important for reasons I'll mention later, but for now let's stay on track. New Rose Hotel tells the story of Fox, played by Christopher Walken, and X, not his real name, or maybe it is, maybe he's Elon Musk's son all grown up, played by Willem Dafoe. The 2 men have been hired by the Hosaka Corporation to convince a geneticist from a rival, Moss Biolabs, to defect over to them. While taking in the local nightlife, the 2 are entranced by a young woman named Sandy. Seeing how easily X fell for Sandy, Fox hatches the plan to use her as a honeypot to lure the geneticist over to Hosaka. And check this out, the geneticist is played by legendary artist and character designer Yoshitaka Amano. It's really just a cameo, he doesn't have any lines, he just walks around looking all cool and aloof, but still, cool beans for OG gamers. As the 2 men prepare her for the big score, both become more and more obsessed, Fox with the job he says will be his masterstroke, and X with Sandy herself. On the big day, X receives a distressing message. It seems that everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong, and now he and Fox are being hunted by the very corporation that hired them. And all the while, all X can think about is reuniting with Sandy. In the book, the story is told via the recollections of the narrator, Dafoe's character, as he's holed up in the titular New Rose Hotel, a capsule hotel near the Narita airport in Japan, trying to evade Hosaka security sweeps. Do a Google search for capsule hotels, by the way. When I first read the story back in the day, I didn't know these things were real, but they're pretty interesting. I don't think I could actually sleep in one, though. I read the story a long time ago, and back then, I just didn't get it. I like William Gibson a lot, but I'll admit, I had to read Neuromancer a couple times before I started to grasp it. What can I say? I'm a bit slow. It's pretty dense, and Gibson does not hold your hand. I didn't fully understand it, but I liked it enough to keep at it. Anyway, I re-listened to New Rose Hotel right before watching the movie to brush up, but I wish I'd watched the movie first to see if I'd get it without being familiar with the story. I can see how people would be a bit put off by it. For one, it's what I like to call deliberately paced, which means it's kinda slow. Plus, all the action, the big heist if you will, takes place completely off camera. There's no big Ocean's 11 style execution. And as mentioned earlier, it is a cyberpunk story, but you'd almost never know it. For the entire first half of the movie, it seems to be taking place in the here and now, circa 1998. I don't remember there being any real hints that it's actually set in the future, but at some point in the second half, Dafoe pulls out a couple little futuristic gadgets that might look totally out of place if you aren't hip to the story's setting. Here you are thinking that you're just watching some modern day thriller, and suddenly there's this little doohickey projecting a holographic image. These little gadgets are really the only things that tie it to cyberpunk, and I can see that as being a little bit confusing. But that aside, I liked it. I know when a movie is as universally panned as this one, you're supposed to jump on the bandwagon with everyone else, but then I'm the guy who gave Megalopolis a fairly positive review. Dafoe and Walken are both as entertaining as ever to watch, especially Walken. He's just walkening it up here. It's not the most Walkening he's ever done, but it's definitely the kind of performance you watch Walken for. His bizarre inflections when speaking, his strange physical gestures and movements, it's all here. And he really makes Fox a likable guy. And the same goes for Dafoe. His performance is more subdued than Walken's, but he's still really great, and the 2 of them have excellent chemistry together. Dafoe is the straight man to Walken's wild card, It feels like these two have been working together forever and have this rich history. Their conversations sound like two guys who have known each other forever, and it almost feels like these two were just old friends talking and someone just decided to film them. Asia Argento is also surprisingly good. I'm not very familiar with her, but she's never really blown me away in the few things that I have seen her in, but her performance here is solid with little subtle looks and gestures that really make her acting feel organic. Now, I've never found her that attractive, but she does do a convincing job as a seductress with this irresistible magnetism. I could believe it. Abel Ferrara is a director with a reputation. Seems you either love him or hate him. I'm not very familiar with his work, but the one movie of his that I have seen, Bad Lieutenant, I really liked it. A story like New Rose Hotel, where a pair of underworld con men are using a woman as a sex trap, is inherently a little sleazy, and Ferrara's gritty style lends itself well to that kind of story. The characters are kinda dirtbags, but they're interesting and likable all the same. You wouldn't invite these guys into your home, or definitely not let them babysit your kids, but you probably wouldn't mind having a few beers with them either. Now, as I said earlier, New Rose Hotel is a cyberpunk story, but one might struggle to say that the movie is. Now, the thing about William Gibson's work is that it's actually very grounded compared to what some folks might think of when they hear that term. Before I discovered Gibson, all I really knew of cyberpunk was Shadowrun and The Matrix, both of which are wilder and more action-packed than Gibson's work, which is quite subdued by comparison. It still has all the crazy tech and the neon, the body augmentations and cyberspace and all that. I mean, hell, that's where it all came from. But it's much more low-key and cerebral. And New Rose Hotel, the story, is probably the lowest key of the sprawl stories. There's not a whole lot in it that really brings the cyberpunk of it screaming into the light. There's no console cowboys or razor girls, so it could very easily be taking place in the modern day, and so could this movie. I wonder if there'd been a bit more neon and chrome, if it might have gone over better. And I don't say that to be snarky, I would have loved that too. If it had worn its cyberpunk roots on its sleeve, maybe had a few more holographic billboards and mirror shades, then it might have been enough to win a few more people over. But who can say? Now, a cynic might describe New Rose Hotel as a movie where people just stand around, or sit around, or lay around, talking. And as a very elemental description of what's happening on the screen, that would be correct. But that would be unfairly glossing over what's actually being said and the actors' performances. True, the major story beats, the seduction of the geneticist and the big reveal, we never see any of that. It's all mostly recounted in conversation. But it's done so in an entertaining way by two likable characters, played by actors who are masters of the craft, being directed by a guy who somehow makes it all compelling. There are a lot of really great movies out there that could also be described the same way, just people sitting around talking. They have long scenes of characters conversing that still manage to be entertaining. Excellent even, thanks to the writing. Tarantino is fantastic at writing dialogue and conversations, and his movies are filled with these scenes. Pontypool is a whole-ass zombie apocalypse movie where it's just a few people sitting in a room talking. There's maybe only 2 zombies in the whole thing, but it works. Probably the best example is My Dinner with Andre, a movie that is literally just 2 guys in a restaurant conversing over a meal, and that movie is rightly hailed as a classic. Now, I'm not ready to say that New Rose Hotel is up there with Pulp Fiction or My Dinner with Andre writing-wise. All I'm saying is that it has a compelling story, good characters played by great actors, and a director who knows how to present it all in an interesting way, even without wild effects or action set pieces. Before I start sucking its toes too much, it does have its problems though. Most notably the ending being this 15 or 20 minute long expository montage that keeps hammering the point home long after you've already gotten it. That definitely could have been cut down a bit. But overall, I liked this movie. though I certainly wouldn't recommend it to just anyone because it's definitely not for everyone. Now, who would I recommend this one to? It's kind of hard to say. I mean, if you're like me and you often find yourself liking movies that other people trash, then it might work for you. It's also got a little bit of sleaze and eroticism in there, so you gotta be cool with that too. The only thing I can say is, if it sounds halfway interesting to you, give it a shot. As of this writing, it's available for free on YouTube, which I'll link in the description, so if you don't like it, you're only out a little time. Look, I understand why people might not dig New Rose Hotel. It's a bit on the slow side. It's pretty much devoid of any action or special effects or exotic locations. It's a movie that lives and dies solely on its writing and performances, and on that, I think it succeeds. Sure, I would have liked a little more cyberpunkiness on the visual front, but for what it is, it's entertaining. If you're a William Gibson fan and you've never seen it, or if you were just curious but were scared off by the bad reviews, give it a shot. You may actually like it. Thank you all so much for watching. Adios.